So my test to a lot of people is, well, if you really believe that, what if I write you a check for a good salary that you want year after year, but the deal is you can't do any meaningful work.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk.
Warning! This is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. I do appreciate the fact that you are listening. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory walks, if you're going to be victorious in any area of your life, uh, life is broken down into many aspects. But if you're going to be victorious in any area of your life, you have to understand mindset. How do you overcome adversity? How do you deal with problems? How do you regulate? I tell the stories over and over again. I grew up in an area where we dealt with problems through physical confrontation, through arguing, and that was okay at that time. But when you start to become an adult, you can't. That's not the way to deal with issues. You don't deal with issues by running away or by not being responsive or my lean in sarcasm. Right? I was watching a movie the other day. No, I was watching Saturday Night Live 50th. Saturday Night Live's been on a roll if you've been watching Saturday Night Live, but and Steve Martin said babies don't understand sarcasm. He's like, oh man, I didn't know that. So and the reason why that was so funny is because it takes a it's usually the person that's being sarcastic is acting out as a child because we don't really have the tools to overcome the adversity or to have tough conversations. So we want to act out as a child and we want to be sarcastic. Our guest today wrote a book and it deals with tools to help us self-regulate, to help us overcome, to help us to be mindful. Uh, Not thinking about yesterday, not thinking about tomorrow, but really being present in the moment. Somik, how are you, sir?
Great to be here, Naron. Doing well.
No,
Thank you for having me.
thank you for joining us. If you talk to our audience about what it is that you're doing and why was it important for you in this time in this climate to write the piece that you wrote?
It's a great question. So I have noticed that around me, there are people who are highly talented. I've met so many people who have a great job, a great title, and a great salary, and yet somehow they feel hollow inside. And this is a problem of epic proportions. And so what happens is people look for meaning, and they're not able to find it in their workplace. So then they make conclusions like, oh, it must be the for profit sector that I want to do something in the non-profit sector. So then they will quit their job, go to a non-profit, and then they find it's even more competitive there. And then now there's no other place to run off to once you you made that jump. So people are stuck somehow in finding or making sense of their life in their daily work. So I wanted to explore that, and the book that I wrote, I imposed certain boundaries or certain constraints on myself. One was the folks who jump out of work and they find some meaning, usually it's in some, say, spiritual retreat or meditation or something. Monday morning comes, you have to come back to the same workplace and meet the same group of people, and you're surrounded by the same metrics. So the answers cannot come from outside. If they come from outside, then you'll feel even more alienated at work. So this book has a very strong imposition of all the wisdom will come from the core tenet of materialism, which is counting. And I took a deep dive into counting and found that it is actually quite philosophical. And that is a very different counterculture idea that I'm offering to my readers, that hey, the book, every chapter starts with some monastic question, like from the monastic traditions or philosophical traditions, an opening question. But the answer will come from materialism or counting, the things that surround us at work. So we can find meaning with what we have. And the third thing that every chapter ends with is feelings. People say counting disconnects you from your feelings, and yet there are these impossible moments when you do get connected to feelings through counting if you count in a certain way. So the book explores that.
It's amazing that you take something that is immaterial, which is our feelings, emotions, connect it to something that's material, feelings, emotions, and external, and then give it a feeling. Um, because a lot of times, if there's no real way to express love, there's no real way to express hate. We like, oh man, if 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 someone came up and hit you, oh man, she must really hate him. You know what I mean? So that's how we view hate. But when we were coming up, if I remember I had this girl, she liked me in elementary school, and she hit me, and I'm like, why she hit me? I don't even. My mother said, oh, she must like you, because there's no real way to tangibly express. When you were dealing with the expressions, how much did you have to toil to really connect those elements together?
I think that's a great question. So, emotions are a very, I would say, understudied subject in science. And we so far haven't quite even differentiated between emotions and feelings.
Mm,
So, so let me put it this way: in decision science, for the longest time, the perception has been around that our emotions interfere with our judgment. That if only you could be level-headed, you'd be making better decisions. Now that's true. Like if you get angry, we do know that we make poor choices. But the flip of it has also been studied, which is by the likes of Professor Antonio Damasio and his colleagues, where they have studied the neuroscience of emotion, and they have looked at people with brain damage in the prefrontal cortex, and that which is right over here, and happens to be the seat of both emotion and executive decision making. Just think about that for a moment. That's a big clue. Like, how could both these things be in the same place? And it turns out that people who have damage in that area, they have full cognitive faculty. They can tell jokes. They can reason. But one thing they cannot do is make decisions. And it turns out the answer is really simple. From the way I would frame it is, emotions are what help us learn. When you see something and you say, oh, I like this, that's a plus one in our neural circuits. That's also counting. And if I don't like it, it's a minus one, right? And if you cannot tell the difference between two alternatives, whether which one you like or which one you don't, you can't make a decision. So it is so fundamental to our decision making apparatus that if we short circuit our emotions, we get stuck in life. And that's a real tragedy. It's like we have no clarity. So this idea, so in my field, I did a PhD in decision analysis, and the goal of my domain is clarity of action. And my claim is clarity of action is not a thought, it's a feeling. You feel it in your bones, you know what to do, and then you can do it. So that, and it's not an impulse, it's like it's really wholesome. So emotions help us get there if you can tap into the joyful part of it, not the negative side of reaction.
So if you take like athletes, I'm going to use them just for baseline for our
Hmm.
audience. if you take an athlete that when it comes to crunch time, the game is on the line, some shy away from the ball, make bad decisions. The big one that jumps in my mind first is Chris Webber. He was a college player in Michigan, and they just came out of they they, they didn't have any more timeouts left. He gets the ball and he's dribbling and he's like fumbling. He's looking around, and but he already knew that they didn't have timeouts, and he just under the pressure calls a timeout, runs off the clock because that's a penalty because they didn't have no timeouts, and the game is over, and he's just like holding his head. What separates like a Chris Webber in that instance didn't say that it was hard to overcome for him, and a person like Michael Jordan, who's known for making clutch baskets, can remove the emotion, doesn't care about the crowd, home or away, and lock in what they need to do. What separates people in their personal lives, those that you see that win, those that you see that make excuses, those that you see who fumble the ball or call timeouts?
But this is a very rich question. There's so many layers in it.
Mm.
I think it ultimately gets to this idea of how we handle our ego. And our ego can either take us to a very limited conception of who we are and one of scarcity. And we can operate from that sense of scarcity. And one of the biggest myths in the world is I don't have time. Time's running out. Whereas time, where does time come from? Time comes from here. You'll notice that when you're doing something you love, time stops. You're not aware of time, and at the same time, you're not aware of your ego either. You're not thinking of I, what's in it for me. You That question has disappeared. And if you can work in that way, magic happens. And you feel so blessed to be able to just be in that space, that sense of bliss, that sense of timelessness. And so the question is, how do you get to more such moments? How do you do the work continuously in that way that it feels like you're blessed just to do the work?
Mm.
And that is a very different state of being. And so what is the inquiry that will get you to your unique, bliss in a sense, like where you feel uplifted? And then you have to listen to yourself in a very different way to find that. And I find it's a very different kind of listening than, hey, what are your preferences? What would you like? It's more, it's less what would you like, it's more who do I want to be. That's truly authentic and truly unique to me. Okay. And that's a very juicy inquiry. That's what my work is focused on.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. That you mentioned it, you alluded to it twice, like people finding their true purpose. Like you mentioned, I'm leaving this work because maybe I want to be in the nonprofit sector. And you go to now, can't really find
Yeah.
yourself because we have in America have defined ourselves by our titles or by what it is that we do, and we haven't really tapped into our true authentic selves. Um, One of the biggest things that happened for me in my life when I was doing a meditation certification through the Chopra Institute, we did this whole thing on I am, and those two
Mm,
powerful words. But we removed all of our titles. We removed our name.
mm.
We removed because if you're a Rockefeller, like I'm a Rockefeller. Like how many times we've seen in the movie, I'm a cop, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
once you remove all of that, then the only thing that we're left with is who we truly are authentically. A lot of people that don't tap into their authentic selves. Your mother said you was going to be a lawyer. You went to school to become a lawyer. Now you're a lawyer. So you don't know how lawyers
Mm.
behave, but you go around a room with a bunch of lawyers and you say, "Oh, okay, I guess that's how I should be acting." Right? How do you? What tools do you get to people give throughout your book to help people to tap into their true authentic selves.
So I've looked at it.
I have to
Yeah.
charge my computer. Go ahead. I'm listening to you.
Okay. So I look at it across three vectors that
Mm,
I call head, heart, and habit. Head is your intellectual energy. This is your conditioning that just attracts you to a certain body of work. The intellectual, you just find very strong affinity to it. Heart is your emotional energy that if this could happen, you feel like your life has served its purpose. And habit is your unstoppable energy, and this is something that shows up when you show up. And in some sense you're trying to discover or just listen deeply to your own conditioning. So so f- th- th- there are many examples I can give, but uh, let me pick one. uh, Let me pick my own. So my heart is in spirit breaking through construct. What does that mean? So when you have a narrow boundary, when people have constrained our thinking with numbers, they're like, okay, your spirit can't shine through. If I can use that containment and still let the spirit shine, that is so meaningful to me. And it takes hard work. So whatever it is in your heart, it'll take your blood and sweat, maybe your whole life, to be able to advance. And I can see myself investing in that. I will put my whole life towards moving that forward. And that to me is about spirit breaking through construct for me uniquely. It may not make other people emotional. That's fine. Now, my habit or my personality type is challenging the status quo. I'm not the person who will just stand there, do nothing. I'm the guy who will, don't just stand there, do something. So I thrive in a bit of that, bringing some kind of a revolution. So if I'm put into a place where I have to just continue the status quo, it's not a good idea for me at all. I'll suffocate. So that's a big part of self awareness. And then the head is my body of work where I'm building distinctions, and that is values based decision making. How do I take values that I feel and express them in counting, in numbers, in metrics? That is my body of work where my heart is respected, which is spirit breaking through the numbers, the constructs. And because it's so different, I'm able to honor my habit, my deepest superpower, which is challenging the status quo. So I'm able to integrate these three things. And if a work context doesn't legitimize any one of them, I will feel incomplete. And if it does legitimize it, I feel so grateful to show up at work. And so every human being has three unique things about this. I'm not saying that they necessarily have to have it, but if you think about it, you might find, and people have found that this is a powerful way of integrating, and very quickly it's like a this is my executive summary of my work soul, if you will. Right? And that's all it takes, three phrases. So but it's meaningful. These phrases, when they come true, then I have a feeling of both emptiness. It's like the ego has gone away because it's so meaningful. I'm not thinking about myself, the lower self. And at the same time, it's very filling. It's like it's full, like it's complete. There's nothing more that needs to be said about what matters to me if these three things are present in my work. Naran, sorry, you're muted.
thank you. When we look at where we are right now, the people are afraid and acting out and don't understand what's happening around them. And if I've been doing a work, let's say 20 something years, I believe that that's who I am. Like, hey, this is what I do. This is what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And then you take that away from me, I might feel at a loss. From your construct, how do you help people to tap into that? Because it's a good in theory, like you wrote it out, right? But then what tools do you give people to help find their way?
Again, a fantastic question. So this is one of the biggest traps, right? You take, and you alluded to it in the past also, that you can take a narrow title and get stuck with it.
Yeah.
So, right, what happened was I was doing my PhD at Stanford in decision analysis, and my professor Brown Howard, who was the co-founder of the field for 50 years, he'd been teaching and spreading that field. I went to him and said, Ron, I've been thinking about what we do. We optimize for value, and I don't understand the word value anymore.
Mm,
And what does it mean? Like, has anybody ever defined it? And so then he sent me off to a person who passed through the doors of MIT for one semester when he was an undergrad 50 years back. And that person's name was Robert Hartman. And Hartman features prominently in my work. He had fled Nazi Germany
mm,
before it became really bad. And he dedicated his life to creating a mathematics of value such that people would never make those mistakes again. And what he came up with was a framework to classify value. And he called it the three dimensions of value. So at the first dimension is intrinsic. Intrinsic is defined as the end in itself. If you have this, you don't need any justification. It's valid because you declare it to be valid. It's defined on life itself. That's the key part. It cannot be anything other than life. Extrinsic is defined as something with a space-time reality, something physically observable, or it has an existence in the material world, and that's a means to an end. And systemic is a third dimension. It's defined as completely artificial construct. So mathematics is systemic. It doesn't really exist anywhere outside of our head. Any religious laws or any laws, anything that is stated as a construct is artificial. Those are systemic values. So then he said, well, these three dimensions, let's look at how the psychological affect changes across them. Intrinsic valuations are those that you cannot separate from who you are. They're a part
mm,
of your identity. Extrinsic are strictly separable. So they are like my car. My car is not my identity. It's just very useful. Okay, so it's separable. And systemic is the most objective. I have no emotional content in there. Now, if you can have this framework, these become your axioms. You can start to have very difficult conversations in a very non judgmental way. So, for instance, somebody says, oh, this promotion, I need this promotion. Like my identity is linked to it. Well, let's see what that means. You need this title. Now, intrinsic values are defined as life, extrinsic is physical, and systemic is titles and constructs. So, promotions, the title is a systemic value. Okay, now let's see how you're valuing this. You're saying it's a part of my identity. So, you have now done an intrinsic valuation of what is a systemic value.
mm.
Would you like to do that? Would you like to be consistent with the framework and just keep intrinsic valuations for intrinsic values? And people can say, "Oh yeah, yeah, I don't want to be violating that. Those axioms make sense to me. I should not be doing this." So that's a very nice way of doing that. And the flip of it is people dehumanize human life, right? So sometimes they will say, "Oh, this war, only 10 people died, or 50 people died in that one. It was worse." Well, that's intrinsic value life. What we've just done is we have turned that into a systemic valuation, into a number which destroys or strips out the richness of this person who was a loved one for some family, a unique individual, irreplaceable, and we've turned them into a single number. So we make this mistake all the time when we engage with population statistics, all the time. It's not just wars. And so we have to be very careful. And so when you have this framework in your mind, you can say, okay, how am I using, how am I counting? Am I breaking the axioms that Hartman laid out for us? And if I am, do I want to be doing that? And immediately that self reflection kicks in, and we realize, no, no, I probably don't want to be doing this.
You know, I think it goes over some people's heads that we're living right now. There's several wars that's happening while we're living, but because it's
Mm.
not happening in our backyard,
Mm.
we don't have any connectivity to it, no sensitivity to it. No, Russia's literally trying to take Ukraine's land, and we're just going on about our day. What happens when we disconnect ourselves from the realities of what's going on around us if it doesn't really affect us personally? Like, you're in San Francisco. I'm in New York. We just seen these heavy fires in California, but my house didn't burn down. So yeah, we stop, we pause for a moment,
Mm.
and we go, "Oh man, oh, you heard what happened in San Francisco?" And then we move so hastily back into There's no compassion. There's no, if it's not a family member. How do we get back to the fabric where we understand that we're all a part of this creative order?
Yeah, so you're asking me all the hard questions here. So,
Well, listen, that's why we call walking victory, baby.
so let's see. I think it's since you started with Russia and Ukraine, it's so easy and tempting to judge other people, like
Mm,
get into, oh, Russia is the bad guy here, Ukraine is the good guy. So easy to do that. And what I really like is you followed that up with, hey, what's going on in San Francisco? And we ourselves are doing these kinds of things every day. So if it is hard for us to know, say, the LA fires, right?
hmm
It's a distant memory now, and yet some people's lives have just turned upside down, and a lot of people's lives actually. And I probably don't think about it every day, and that's just the nature of the human condition, right? So this framework, when we do have decision situations where there is some impact on them, the framework first of all allows me to pause and ask, am I doing these mistakes, these valuation mistakes? That's number one. The second one is, you'll be surprised that in my book there's I think it is the fourth chapter where I have a China and story there, China and Tibet, and that's a, kind of like the Russia and Ukraine. And what happened there was, I was I had my sympathies in one direction of the China Tibet conflict, and I was working with a Chinese subject, and he like, so in my heart I was like, oh, the Dalai Lama is such an amazing person, and what have they done in Tibet, right? And he was trying to give me the other side, and I had to work really hard not to have the judgment and clean my heart
mm,
of the last trace of judgment for this person. And he taught me something amazing. It's like at one point, using Hartman's framework, I kept asking, hey, why do the Chinese people care about Tibet? And if you can answer why, then it can't be your intrinsic value. I'm trying to find what is your intrinsic value in Tibet. And we went on and on, and after a while he got utterly frustrated because everything seemed extrinsic. Oh, it's good for development. Why is development good? And so there's always answers behind answers. So he gave up and he said, okay, Somik, we've been talking for hours. You tell me, what do you think is our value in Tibet? And it was such a surprising question from this person that I don't know why. I just said very emphatically that China cares about all its citizens, and that includes Tibetans. You care about the well being of all. That's why you care about Tibet. I found myself saying that, which is very surprising to me. And this person got almost emotional. And he said, Somik, we Chinese people, we feel highly judged in the West because the moment we have a
mm,
counterpoint against the Dalai Lama, we are ostracized. We cannot be in the conversation. People look down upon us. We feel terrorized, and we have a slightly different point of view, and there's no space. And that got me thinking that, could it be that, and of course sample size of one, so you have to take it with a big grain of salt, but could it be that in a bad conflict we really could not have done anything to make it better, but we actually made it worse with our judgment? And
mm,
maybe that caused even more harm to the Tibetans than normally would have come their way, because they're like, you're not going to listen to us anyway, so we'll show you how bad we can be. And that just terrifies me. It's like, oh my God, I, with a good heart, made it worse. So that opened my eyes to, when you have these word conflicts, it's not, it's always nuanced, it's always complicated, and it's not clear that if I'm able to make it better, but I know I can make it worse with judgment. So that's been the shift I've made over the years, that how can I reduce my judgment, create more space for understanding? And if I can't do anything, maybe the best I can do is just really wish everybody well. And it's just very difficult. I don't have an answer. I,
You
I
know,
would rather, yeah.
that's when I was doing my theological studies, the first lesson, if you don't know,
Mm,
it's powerful to say I don't know. You don't have to have all the
yeah,
answers, right? There's power
yeah, yeah.
in admitting, hey man, some things is above my pay grade. And I think that when we see the countries coming into the United Nations and they're sitting down for this summit and they talking peace and they're trying to get to a place of peace, everyone has their perspective.
Mm,
And the mediator is trying to listen impartially, but even the mediator has their perspective. So
That's right. That's right.
so they're trying to lean one
That's
way to
right.
the other, lean one. I was taking a negotiation class, and I used to think, um, my first business was construction, and I used to think, well, when a person asks me for a price, I'm going to ask them for their budget, and then I'll work from the framework of their budget, and at least I could know that I'm in the ballpark. And when I took this negotiation class through Sigma in Harvard, um, it's like, don't be afraid to name your price first.
Mm,
You don't have any more power by not naming your price first. You're not giving the
mm.
customer more power or authority. You don't have in the negotiation, because if they can't afford it, then you're just wasting your time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
and
right.
and and what I what it also taught us is that price is not the competitive advantage. If you're using pricing as a competitive advantage, then you shouldn't be in business.
Mm,
If you can't justify your price, then you have a problem. So it's
mm,
not don't be afraid to say the number. How do I justify the number? We just talked about numbers and making them
mm.
emotional, right? How do I justify the number? So this is what this price is going to entail, right? Now, why, if I'm coming over everybody else's price, should you go with me as opposed to someone else? This is not a government contract. We're really
Yeah.
talking because the government is looking for lowest price. Right?
Yeah. 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 That's right.
We're
That's right.
talking negotiation. But
Yeah.
also, if a person says this is how much I can afford, don't take advantage of them if you know you could come under price, because you want to leave with a win-win. The moment that a customer feels, the moment that a person feels that they got fleeced in a negotiation, they're never going to feel the same way towards you again. They'll pay you,
That's right.
but they're never going to feel good. They're going to want what we call on the street get back. You don't want people out trying to get you back.
It's so good that you're saying this. There are three schools of negotiation, okay, from
Mm,
my perspective. One school says do whatever you can to get ahead.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
The second says tell no lies. That hey, if so so that's a big advance. Like from do anything to don't tell a lie, focus on long term relationships. That's
hmm
great, but that also falls short because let's say a grandmother comes to your store and says I want a hammer, and she doesn't need a hammer, but hey, you're not telling no lies, you're just selling her the hammer she wants. So the third school says be a trustee for the other person and
mm,
tell the whole truth even if it sets you back, because you are taking care of the other person. Like what if this was your grandmother or your mom? Would you not tell her that hey, why are you buying this? Don't buy this, buy that, or that other store over there is where you should be going. And when you take that trusteeship mindset, everything changes. And this third school of thought is what I'm grateful to have learned from my professor Ron Howard. He had when he looked at decision making, he looked at it in three dimensions,
mm.
which is prudential is what is good for me, legal is what is lawful for me, and ethical is what is right for
Right
me.
for me.
And the
Yeah.
ethical is so important that he would spend a whole quarter with all of us looking at very difficult ethical choices. And what his sensitization for us was really that we don't take the time to think. If we take the time to think, all the wisdom is in there. If we just ask some really good questions of ourselves, and how do you, the worst time to think about ethics is when you're in a dilemma. So you want to think ahead of time how to not get into an ethical dilemma. So the trusteeship comes out of that work, that I don't have to worry about it if I tell you the whole truth that hey, Naron, I love you around, but I'm not your guy. Like, I can't solve your problem. I don't want to, that. This is, I think, what you were trying to say. You probably should go with the other guy because your needs are different than what I can
than what I can
do for you. Yeah,
this is I train people, right? And one of the one of my biggest things is if you have a guy raising money for you and you're underpaying him, eventually he's going to steal. He doesn't come in as a
that's right.
thief. He doesn't come in as a thief.
That's right. That's right.
But one day he's going to get in his car. He's like, "I'm raising this money for them. They didn't give me a raise. They don't appreciate me. They don't value me, and I'm raising this
That's
money."
right.
And eventually he's gonna help himself. It's just no one takes a job saying I'm going to go in and fuck it up.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, that's right.
That's just what happens is we build these constructs, and there's only but so much a person can take. And when the person feels
Yeah.
undervalued, underappreciated, then they start to make these ethical moves. They're probably not going to sit in the board meeting because they already know that the people undervalue them and say, "Hey, man, I raised you $2 million, but I'm still you guys never gave me a raise." And then they're gonna say, "Oh,
Yeah.
you didn't do anything. We did it, right?" so,
Yes.
so what happens is
Oh my God. Yeah.
that ethical part right there.
Hmm.
Do the guy walk away? Now he has to go to another place to prove himself or herself again, or do the guy just help himself? And 9 times out of 10, people start to help themselves. We judge them for them helping themselves, but we don't really get to the underbelly of why. So I train
That's right.
people
Yeah.
to don't put yourself in that situation. First
Yeah.
of all, if you're raising money, if you're doing things like that, maybe you should think about one of my teachers told me it's better to talk about money before money is made because once money is made, nobody wants to talk.
That very very profound thoughts there. You know, so one of the things I found is people have this pervasive notion that the purpose of business is to make money,
Mm,
and I will often, so my test to a lot of people is, well, if you really believe that, what if I write you a check for a good salary that you want year after year, but the deal is you can't do any meaningful work.
mm,
You just can't do anything that has any meaning for you. You just get the check. You can be on a continuous vacation. And no thoughtful person has said yes to that deal. And so that means that the purpose of business can't be to make money. Well, the other thing people say is it's to create shareholder value. Well, that's a little bit like saying the purpose of my life is to make my bankers happy. And when I say that out loud, then they say, "Oh, that sounds silly. Of course, my purpose of my life is not to make my bankers happy. I got to return the money for sure, but my purpose is much deeper."
mm.
And I think Ford said it really well. He said that the purpose of a business, can't be. He said business has to make money or it will die,
Yeah.
but its purpose cannot be to make money because then also it must die. It needs a different purpose. The money is an instrumental value. You need to make money so you can deliver on your values. So you
Mm.
can't put the cart before the horse. And Disney said it even better. I don't make movies to make money. I make money to make movies, right? And that's so powerful. So when you can discover, like going back to the values discovery process, if we can tap into our creative joy and externalize that, it's like everything I'm saying is counterculture. It's like you don't have to internalize anything. I'm saying that I'm trying to come up with an apparatus so everybody else, I can shut up and listen to the other
Yeah.
person
Yeah. Yeah.
for what is already in there.
Yeah.
And so they can bring it out and see, oh, this is awesome. And yeah, we got to make money so we can bring this out to the world because awesome things deserve to be brought out. And suddenly I don't feel so bad asking for money because it's for a great
It's
cause.
great for yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
right. So it's not ego driven. It's like, yeah, we are in this together. Let's do something amazing while we're around on this planet.
My last thing when I was training in yoga, my teacher Eddie Stern,
Hmm.
um, he's he taught me something. I grew up in the projects. Even the church that I attended was a low income. Everybody was not
Mm,
everybody was struggling financially, but you understand what I'm saying. The most
mm,
if you build a church in a poor community, you're gonna have a bunch of poor people, right? But so the mindset of giving back, and he was like,
mm,
don't use that word give back. We're doing our part. Because when you talk about give back, it's like a
mm.
handout or hand down, like you're better than the other person. It's our
Yeah.
it's our ethical duty to help out humanity. What you wrote, what you're doing, is not a give back. You're not lending your voice into some. You're helping humanity and giving constructs to people from what it is that you have the benefit of learning. How do you um yeah how do you express that?
Well, it's so the best way to share what we
Hmm.
have with the world is just to be ourselves, because everyone else is taken. And if we can create space, right?
I can't be nobody else.
It's, it is so freeing, right? Like if I find, usually what people will say is, oh, you have this habit, like, this thing you can't change, you're this and that. But if you can turn that around and say, no, let me find context, let me use intelligence that we've been given and create context where what I have come with is an asset and not a liability.
Mm,
Suddenly I'm not struggling against the tide anymore. Suddenly, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. If somebody says, I can't stick to one job, okay, I gotta keep jumping. So
I know
now you
somebody
could
like
be judgmental and say, right, it's like, this person has commitment issues, go
that.
fix it. Or you could say, you would be a star consultant, go to a consulting company, and things change all the time. And we need people who don't get attached to a single thing, but who are able to move on and deliver value. So the context matters, and that context completely changes how people are received. And so we have a role to play in creating those contexts for ourselves. So that's kind of the broad message, that if we can accept ourselves, like what is our emotional energy, what is our intellectual energy, and our superpower, then we can create contexts where those three things are respected. And when we do that, we have a chance of coming alive. And when we come alive, then we work outside of our ego or beyond our ego. And then that's like the dance of nothingness and everything coming together.
Oh wow,
So, yeah,
that's an amazing dance. Thank you, sir. Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Listen, everyone. All of the information to get this book, website, everything is in the description. Somik now is a part of our Walk in Victory family. We don't ask you for anything except that you walk into your true authenticity. Don't walk with your head down. Don't walk making excuses. We don't ask for Venmos, Cash Apps, or anything like that. But we do ask is that you hit like, share, and subscribe. That's your value to us because it helps these conversations get to the ears of those who need it. Don't be selfish. Do it right now. Enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to go get that book. And once you buy the book, leave a review because it helps him go a little bit further in the algorithms. And let him know that you came from hearing him on Walk in Victory. Peace.